So, continuing on with different water projects here in the United States, um, there is the Colorado River Project. And so, the Colorado River is the major river in the southwest United States. And it actually feeds from the snow melt from the Rocky Mountains to the Gulf of California. So, up here, it actually gets fed by that snow melt off the mountains. And it's massive. It flows through 7 states. Um, and along it, it actually has 14 major dams and reservoirs. So it is quite a used river. Um, and there are canals to control flooding and to supply water to different areas of the United States. And not only does it supply water to the United States, it also supplies electricity. So this is where you can see a lot of hydroelectric power coming from, which is great, kind of. But obviously hydroelectric has its faults. But the water that it's supplying is supplying it to the nation's driest, hottest cities. So you look at Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Diego, all of these areas are naturally dry areas. And now we are feeding um, the water from the Colorado River over to these cities, which are dry and supposed to be dry. And so, we want to make sure that we have our beautiful, lush green grass lawns and all that stuff. But when you live somewhere where grass is not supposed to go, maybe you shouldn't have grass. So here's a picture of Los Angeles. You can see all the green here. That was not originally there. So if you click on this link, also in the links in the PowerPoint link document, there is a massive growth of Los Angeles over the last 40 years. And so you can see that I'm sorry, not Los Angeles, Las Vegas. You can see that Las Vegas has gotten greener and greener. In the video, the green areas are actually red. Most of them are golf courses. But anyway, not only do we supply water for domestic use and for recreational use, but there also supplies water for irrigation. And so there's this severe drought from over withdrawal of the Colorado River. So, how can we increase our water supply even further? Well, why not drink the salt water, right? Well, you can't drink salt water because it will dehydrate you. So instead, we can remove the salts from the salt water. And so the first way to remove salt from salt water is through a process called distillation. And so pretty much you heat up salt water so the water is evaporated. The water that so you catch the condensate from that evaporation and and put it into a different container, collect that fresh water um, that the condensation on the top of this distillation um, mechanism, and the solids are left behind. So, what do you do when with the solids that are left behind? Well, you dump them back to where they came from, which is into the ocean. And this actually can lead to a change in the concentration of the ocean water if you do it enough. Another way to remove the solids from or the salts from the salt water is through a process called reverse osmosis. And so you have this semi permeable membrane where really only water can get through. And so you apply pressure and you actually force the water to go through this membrane, and all the solids are left behind. Again, um, you have this high concentration of salt that's left behind and dumps back into the um, area where you took the water from, and it will raise the salinity of the local waters there. The cost is very high. The amount of energy it takes for both of these methods is high. And It also takes some chemicals in order to sterilize the water from all of the microorganisms that live in ocean water. Another way we can increase water supply is through irrigation or better irrigation practices. Um, Most irrigation is inefficient. Remember that the majority of water used is through irrigation. Um, Most of it is actually evaporated off and not even used for plants because it is, the plants don't need that much, and ultimately the amount of water that's put on there has a high chance of evaporating. And so, more water is delivered than is actually needed. And this spray irrigation that you'll see a lot um, is putting huge amounts of water onto the fields, and a lot is lost to evaporation, like I said. But what we can do is increase our efficiency. So you have this center pivot low pressure sprinkler. You can see this is where you get those crop circles, if you want to call them that, right? Circles of crops, because it's pivoting along a center, and the sprinkler is actually really low pressure, so it's not putting as much water onto the crops. Um, you have these precision application sprinklers where the sprinkler actually has these tubing running from the top down onto the ground, and it drags on the ground so that the water is more applied more directly. And finally, you have drip irrigation, where you have this tubing all along the crop, and so the water is delivered at a very slow rate right near the roots, and it's just a drip, drip, drip right at the crop root. So a lot more efficient irrigation, a lot lower chance of evaporation. So another way is that industry needs to recycle their water that they use in their processes. So chemicals, paper, energy production, all of these things can use their water again instead of dumping it. And then domestically, what you can do is have a water efficient toilet or a dual flush toilet, low flow shower head, a compostable toilet which doesn't use any water. Fix your water leaks, replacing lawns with native plants. So, not to have a grass that is not native to the area, which is actually most lawns. And also reuse and recycle gray water. So all the water from the dishwasher, sinks, showers, washing machine can be treated and possibly used to flush your toilet. And so here's a little infographic about other things that you can do. But we will talk more about irrigation practices, which is the massive use of water. The how water is used the most, and different practices that can actually reduce that when we get to agriculture. So stay tuned.